All right, how's everyone doing? Good? Okay, cool. So I have a really bad tendency in my academic career to be a very bad procrastinator. And by a very bad procrastinator, I mean a very good procrastinator. So as such, my notes are a little bit flipped up, so give me a few seconds if ever I need between slides. I also, there's this thing, to just get ready. So everyone's still doing well? Yes? Cool. So like I said, was introduced, my name is Francesco. My pronouns are he and him. I am, much like you folks, a student here at the University of Ottawa. And as said as well, I have a chance to be in the Conflict Studies and Human Rights program. Yeah, it's awesome. It's a great program. But there's a question that comes with that program, which is, what do you want to do after your program? What do you want to do with that degree? That is a very good question. And I want to just finish my degree. I want to get my degree first. I want to go on from there. And I want to get my degree. And when I tell people I want to get my degree, I want to get it at all costs. But what does that mean? What does all costs mean? To what extent does that go to? And to answer that, it takes a lot of self-reflection. And in fact, self-reflection is something that I'm still doing up to this day. It's something that I'm going to be doing all throughout this presentation. And hopefully, the more I present, the more you'll be able to understand me, and the more you'll be able to understand this presentation in depth. And so as such, I'm going to be talking. The more I talk, the more I will learn, the more you folks will learn, and I will be able to exchange with you folks and learn as well off of you. Because insight is something that never stops in life. The more you live, every day that you live, you're going to learn something new about yourself, and that is something that happens. And because of that, I think that this introduction is really weird because introductions never stop in life. As such, because you grow, because you become a different person every day, your introduction will be different every time that you get up in the morning. And so, I guess my introduction is a really weird way of saying that during this whole presentation, each slide that I go to, you'll know more about me. And so, I'll just start my presentation all off again so that we can start the introduction through the whole presentation. So like I said, Francesco, pronouns are he and him. I enjoy video games. I'm an avid gamer. Are there any other gamers here in the room? Yes? Okay, cool. Great. I have a few gaming references in my presentation, so I'm glad that there's a few of us here. So I also really love Netflix. I watch it way too much, especially in this time of exam season. Not too good, but that's okay. I want to rewatch House of Cards. And so, like I said, I'm also studying. I am studying in Conflict Studies and Human Rights. Now, this is the logo of my student association, but don't let it fool you. Don't let the little dove fool you. Our program is 90% Conflict Studies and 10% Human Rights. And that surprised me a lot when I came here. Because when I finished high school and I started the program in Conflict Studies and Human Rights, I wanted to concentrate on that human rights side. I didn't want to concentrate on chaos, violence, and death. I wanted to study peace, humanity, and life. But I soon realized, coming here, that my interpretation of that and my desire to only want to concentrate on peace, humanity, and life comes from a very privileged point of view. Because of the privilege that I have, so yes, I face hardship in my life. I identify as a queer person. I'm also a francophone. I deal with a lot of mental anxiety and stress, but despite that, I'm also white. I'm also able-bodied, or what society claims as able-bodied. I am also working class. I have the chance to work 2 jobs to be able to stay myself here at the university to be able to go through my studies. And because of this has shaped the way that I'm able to understand and able to what I want to learn in society. And so, because I only wanted to learn, because I was never exposed to great deals of oppression, such as racism, sexism, transphobia, I was always able to say, I only want to concentrate on the nice parts of life because I wasn't forced to look at the bad parts. And so, taking that understanding farther there, I was able to see that if I truly want to understand peace, and I truly want to understand what humanity and life is, I have to understand war. I have to understand conflict, and I have to understand battle as well. So this is a scene that we see very often when we think of war. We think of tanks, we think of guns. I also want to give a little content warning that this presentation will deal with matters such as war, conflicts, and violence. And so if ever anyone feels uncomfortable at any point, please feel free to step on out. I'm not going to take it as a personal offense. And so when we think of war, we think of these things. We think of the guns, we think of battles. But then what happens when, for example, we have more and more media looking on the refugee crisis in Syria. So we see how civilians, and most of the times it is civilians that are affected in times of war. But what happens then when we want to bring peace to them? We oftentimes create even more situations of war. And so we use these little symbols here, such as the peace sign, to want to bring more stability to a region. However, one of the things that I understood here is that war not only manifests itself abroad, it is also here. It is also present within the society, within this city, within this institution, within this very room, in fact. There's another form of war that affects us, that affects our society, which we call oppression. And oppression seems very drastic to be compared to war, and we often get the little image of the social justice warrior on Tumblr who is so adamant and as an advocate for all that social change. But it is war. People die. People die from oppression. People are terrorized from oppression. People are scared to go to their own workplaces or leave their rooms because of the identities that they face and the oppression that comes from those identities by the society. And so I don't think that's a far stretch to compare war to oppression in this sense. And now, when we compare oppression, we want to change the world, don't we? To me, that's what activism is. Let me find my little papers here. But now, how do we combat oppression? Since it's a war, do we treat it like normal war? Do we charge in somewhere with guns and bombs and tanks? No, that's not how it works. Oppression is not a state to which you can wage war. It's not an enemy to which you can declare, you are someone that is bad and I'm going to fight you. How can you fight oppression? Where do you fight oppression? And with what do you fight oppression? To me, that is what activism is. And one of the quotes that I love to hear when I talk about oppression is a quote from Alice Walker, who is an American activist and author. And so she states that activism is my rent for living on this planet. Wow, microphone problems. And so I want to live my life. I want others as well to be able to live their lives in order to make it better for those after me. I want people around me, not just after me, but as well right now, to not have to face the hardships that I have faced. And as well, I want to learn about the hardships that others face so that I can take a better role in how to attack those forms of oppression. So we have to equip ourselves. We have to equip the future generations to come in how to deal with the things that even we can't right now. But then how do we equip ourselves? Like I said, we can't equip ourselves with bombs or guns. That's not how we fight oppression. In oppression, in the war, in activism, we are our own weapons. And that is at the same time very, very powerful, but very dangerous at the same time. We are our own weapons, and activism, education, and ideas are our ammo. Now, we're our own weapons here, and because of that, we shape our future. We drive social change. We want to make lives better. To do that, we have to leave our own comfort zones. We have to voluntarily give up what makes us comfortable so that we can understand that other people don't live in the same comfort levels as we do, and so that we can help bring everyone into that same zone. Now, we are our own weapons, like I said, and I'm making a lot of references to weapons because, as I said, conflict studies and human rights were consistently bombarded with the theories and ideas of war. And so I'm going to be able to visualize the oppression and forms of war a bit here. So if we're weapons, what kind of weapons are we? Are we machine guns? Can we fire incessantly without having to recharge? Are we a pistol? Are we something that's more accurate, something that we can take time to charge, take time to aim? I think that we can be anything in between, but for me and for many other activists out there, I think that we would compare ourselves to being a cannon. Now, why a cannon? Well, because when used properly, it can be surprisingly precise. It can be very strong as well. It has a very, very powerful and blunt impact. However, if used wrong, if used in a negative way, it can even hurt the people that we seek to help. And because of that, we have to take into account our actions and who they affect. And there are many forms of cannons as well. There are smaller cannons that are mobile, that we can drag with us, that are able to concentrate on many areas of fire. There's also ground cannons, like we see here, able to put themselves in one place, fire strongly in the direction of one enemy. So there's multiple types of cannons that we can identify as being an activist, of course, in terms of a metaphor. Me, personally, as well as many other activists I know, would say that we are glass cannons. Now, why a glass cannon? So like I said, a glass cannon obviously clearly doesn't exist in real life, because if you were to shoot out of a glass cannon, I would not want to be there. There's probably going to be lots of shards going everywhere. So it's not a good idea to bring this into an actual war zone. It's more of a metaphor. And a glass cannon actually comes from a gaming term. So my gamers out there, who here plays League of Legends? Yes? Okay, cool. So who knows what a glass cannon is? Few people? Awesome. So a glass cannon, for those of you who don't know, is someone who has a very strong offense, is very powerful, but despite their powerfulness, they are also very fragile. To me, I am a glass cannon. My activism is a glass cannon because although being very strong and determined in what I do, I'm also very fragile, which I guess comes into the second part of my introduction where I can restate it. My name is Francesco, pronouns are he and him. I love Netflix, love gaming, love spicy food as well, and I am fragile. I am so incredibly fragile. I am delicate, and to me that is not a weakness, that is one of my strengths. Because knowing that fragility, I am able to know my limits, set my limits, and work around them, and to me that makes my activism and the work I do even more powerful. And our weaknesses and our fragility is not something we should ever be ashamed of, because it's who we are. And we are humans after all. We can't always be hard as rock and determined and never afraid of anything. It is normal to be afraid. It is normal to be hurt. It is normal to be fragile. And recognizing that fact just recognizes our basic human existence. And so to me, despite being that fragile glass cannon, I think I have some pretty good hits to give. I think that I have some good work to do here, especially on the battle zones. But once again, activism is a weird war. What kind of weapons do we use? We don't know. What kind of war do we wage? It's kind of hard to say. Where do we wage our war? That's as well a question that is hard to answer. So battle zones, be it in video games or be it in real life, are very physical. It's easy to see. Do we go certain places? Do we do certain jobs? As you can see on the left, for my gaming fans once again, and on the right for an actual battle zone. And in real life or in a video game, you can see that there are very specific positions that we have to take. There are jobs to do and places to do the jobs. And just like in activism, there's the same concept. Now, in activism, what happens if we all want to change the world? We're all our cannons. Like I said, cannons are very useful, but they can also be very dangerous if fired not in the right direction. Because of that, activism also needs positions to be filled. As an activist, you can't expect to always be on the front lines, and that's also where allyship comes in, right? Being a good activist is also understanding that the places that you're needed the most isn't always the place where you want to be, or the place that you would first choose to be. Sometimes it's giving out water bottles. Sometimes it's making sure that everyone feels safe or comfortable. Sometimes it's just making sure that people aren't harassing the other people. Being an activist, being an ally especially, is going to ask the community that you want to help, what do you need? Not thinking what they need for them. And that is incredibly important, because how can we expect to work? How can we expect to work if we all work independently and never ask anyone else? So sometimes we have to put away our pride and say that my glass cannon, my fragility, is at stake, and I know that my skills are best used in certain places rather than others. Now, going back to the idea of cannons, to me, when I think of an activist cannon, this is what I think of. So we have strong, powerful blow being blown, but our ammo are our ideas. They are the actions. This is the education that we seek to provide. And as such, we have to prepare. We have to launch our ideas. We have to launch our radical acts of love, but also our acts of pain. We use our emotions to focus and change the world, no matter how big or small our actions are. And that is very important to know, that your actions as an activist or even as an ally are always important. No matter what you do, as long as you're trying to promote change in the right way, is important, and don't let anyone tell you that your actions are too small or too big. We do this activism so that we can prove that we can do it, and so other people can do it again after us. Now, what happens, however, when we're an activist? We have our intentions, we want to do this, we've asked, we want to do our social change, we're being an ally, we're being the proper ally that we should, but sometimes things don't add up. Sometimes something goes wrong. Sometimes our movements, our education that we want to do, the actions and the ideas that we seek to propulse don't always go as planned. So sometimes people are very successful. Sometimes their cannonball shoots very far. and they're very proud of it, and they celebrate. Woohoo! But sometimes it's not so easy. Sometimes we do everything right. We think that we do everything right. We do the preparation, we prepare ourselves, and when we shoot, it doesn't go as far as we expect. What happens? Why did we fall short of our goal? There's a problem. We think that there is a problem in our community, and we take the responsibility on ourselves, and we blame ourselves because our actions did not succeed. Why didn't my go action as far? Why didn't it go like I planned? I did everything right. How could this happen? This is a problem that I feel like the activist community constantly faces, especially us as student activists. Because obviously we have the stresses of life. We have our grades, we have school, we have our personal life, we have our family, our friends, we have work sometimes, working 2 to 3 jobs just to be able to be here in this system that tells us that we have to assimilate. And on top of that, we say that is not enough. We want to promote change. We not only want to participate in the system, we want to change the system. And that is a stress that is additional. It's not a stress that everyone has to take on. It's not a stress that many people want to take on, in fact. It is something tough, it's something hard to do, and yet us, student activists, decide that we are ready to take on that extra stress in order to make the world a better place for everyone here. And so, to me, to understand why our actions might not go as far as we want to sometimes, we have to understand how our canon works exactly. And to me, our canon, our activism, is a whole working in 3 parts. We have the canon, we have the repulsion, and we have the ammo that we want to shoot. So the canon is ourselves, our body, our minds, anything that we can prepare ourselves. So this is there to make sure that we are ready and equipped to deal with the actions that we want to undertake. Then we have our motivation, we have our drive. What do I want to do? I want to do this, I want to do it right. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to propulse my ideas and actions, which are the cannonball, in order to make an effect, to achieve our goal. But what happens when one of the 3 things aren't working? What happens when your cannon doesn't want to fire? What happens when your drive is missing and you can't fire your cannonball? What happens when your cannonball isn't there, or it's too big, it's too small, it doesn't fit in your cannon? These are things that can affect how our activism works out. And it's not our fault. It is not our fault. You cannot take it upon yourself because your canon is somehow faulty. And actually, it's not faulty. We as our humans are ourselves, and we are not broken beings. We are beings that are dynamic, we are changing, and because of that, that is important to understand that our actions can sometimes not play out the way we want them to. So how do we fix it? How do we make sure that our cannon can recharge again and fire and achieve the goal that we actually want to? Well, that's really important, and that is self-care. You cannot be a student activist if you don't take care of yourself, and trust me, that is a lesson that took me a long time to learn. I would oftentimes ignore my own fragility, ignore my own needs, and I would say, I just have to concentrate on this, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to do a full front, and I'm going to ignore myself while I work on this goal. And while I would sometimes achieve the goal, and sometimes I wouldn't, I would realize at the end that I was drained, and I was not able to continue. And so a key process, a key element to me becoming a better activist and a better ally is also understanding that I cannot do the work that I want to do if I am not ready, and if I am not ready to take care of myself as well. But how do we take care of ourselves? We're humans, right? We have basic needs. Everyone here has basic needs. So what do we do? Well, for an activist, things may be a little different. Maybe you want to check up on the media sources that you can do. There's a lot of media sources that can affect us, especially in the way that they portray events. Events are very subjective. You can choose how you want to portray something. Maybe it's negative or positive. The media chooses how they want to portray that, and the way that you see it can greatly affect the outcome of your things. Maybe it's distancing yourself from social media. Sometimes shit's too hard to deal with, and that sucks. But sometimes it just takes a week. Take a break from Facebook, take a break from Twitter. Realize that your life is not limited to these social media aspects, and that you can return to it once you are ready, once you have taken care of yourself, and you realize that you are more than what society tells you, and you are more than your achievements, you are more than your fragility. Are you over-obsessing over the progression of a movement? For any activist here, I think that we can identify with this being that The movement that we want to fight for is often the core ideal of what we're fighting for. So we have to move it, we have to do it. When we don't see progress, we feel so bad because we feel like we're taking it upon ourselves. We're not doing the work that we're supposed to do. This should be going fast. Why is it not happening? We're going to blame ourselves for the fact that a movement is not progressing, and we're going to sometimes lose sleep over it. We're going to miss meals. We're not going to be able to do the things that we normally want to do or need to do because we think we're putting a movement before ourselves. And like I said, we can't advance a movement without taking care of ourselves first. Are you practicing radical art? And I want to thank the people that surround me here, especially my partner, because radical art is something that is very hard to do, especially for me. What is art? I have no idea. I cannot draw. You've seen the stickman that I tried to draw. It went horrible. It took me literally 30 minutes to perform one stickman on paint. So clearly the fine arts is not my degree. How do you practice radical art? That can take many forms. It's not just painting or poetry. It can be talking. It can be writing. It can be walking. It can be exercise. It can be anything that you want to do. Are you surrounding yourself with like-minded people? Sometimes that is the hardest thing to do. Because we have friends, we have best friends. I personally came from a small town where I had so many friends around me that were very important to me, but I soon realized that they were very toxic. They were, in fact, negatively impacting my ability to be not only an activist, but also be mentally healthy. Sometimes it's very hard, but it takes that extra step to realize that not everyone around you is helping you, and that is a very important thing to do. It's a very important realization, and it takes a lot of self-reflection to get to that point as well. And it's something that I'm still currently striving to do. Are you reminding yourself that you are a member of the community that you wish to help? And sometimes I think that this is one of the most core aspects of activism, is that we're always thinking of others. We want to help others, but we don't realize that to help others, we also have to help ourselves. To make sure that everyone can live the life that we want them to live or that we want ourselves to live, we need to make sure that we include ourselves in the idea. And that can be a really good way, especially when you're trying to be an ally. When you're trying to help a cause, take a second to think, if someone was trying to help me, would I appreciate their actions being acted like this? No? Then maybe it's time to rethink our actions. Because you too are worthy of the devotion that you give to others. And that is essential. Everyone here matters, is important. You are a unique individual, and your flaws are not your weaknesses. In fact, taking them into account can make you even stronger. But on a little brighter note, as basic human beings, we also have desires, we also have needs that we have to listen to. So general human self-care. What are you doing? Are you taking time for yourself? Are you taking time to do what you need to do? Are you spending time with friends? Are you spending time with colleagues or comrades? People that make your life positive. Are you taking the time out of your day to go forward and search these people that are going to help you deal with your situations? Are you remembering to eat enough? And that can be as little or as much as we think fit. Do you rest enough? Are you taking the time to sleep? That is something that, as students, activists or not, I think that we can all attest to the fact that all-nighters are getting more and more frequent as December arrives. Do you take time to practice your hobbies? Especially in exam season, this should not be a time where, okay, we're only going to concentrate on studies and we're not going to do what we like, because that can be extremely harmful and toxic to our bodies, especially as activists as well. Are we taking time for ourselves to do what we like, to do what helps us? That's super important to take into account. Are we taking time to acknowledge how amazing we are? I think that on the intermission here, when everyone goes out, you need to profoundly recognize the fact that the work that you're doing is valid, the work that you're doing is needed, be it activism, be it student things, be it scholarly things. Are you studying? Are you going to work? Are you getting out of bed in the morning? As weird as it seems, getting out of bed is one of the bravest things you can do, because that is the first step to taking action in the day. Getting out of bed means that you are ready to take on the day. You are saying, willingly or not, I'm going to confront whatever challenges I face today. And that is, to me, one of the most bravest and radical actions that we can do as human beings. And you remember that you're a human being with needs, desires, and requirements. Never forget that. There are things that are essential to you, more than just food or shelter. There's things that are emotionally essential to us. We need to listen to those essential things. We need to answer them. We cannot ignore them, because that is the first step to not being able to achieve ourselves, to fulfill ourselves. If we forget that we're basic humans who need things and desire things, then how can we ever expect to make a social change? And so to me, this is one of the things that helps me often, especially not only when I'm having anxiety, but just in every general day. When I'm having a very stressful day, it's called grounding. This is not my own idea. I found it on the internet. It was very helpful. And I'd just like to say that this may work for you. It may also not. We're all individuals. We have different ways of coping with anxiety, different ways of coping with stress. And sometimes finding the way of how to cope is very hard. But to me, this is one that I think helps me a lot, and I wanted to share with you folks, called grounding. So 5 steps, counting up to 5. 5 things that you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. This is also a very able-bodied, or I shouldn't say able-bodied, but a very, what society tells us is being able-bodied way of thinking things. So this is not the only way by far. It's not a perfect way. It's up to interpretation. You can change it or however you see fit. And so finally, thank you folks very much for listening. And through this presentation, I hope that I didn't bore you too much, and I hope you were also able to recognize at least one fact, student activists or not, that you are important, you matter, and whatever you do in society, please recognize your fragility. It's not a weakness, it's your greatest strength. Thank you.